Today's class is Strategies for Developing Effective Training and Facilitation Skills in Clinical Research. What I'm going to be doing is really throwing a number of different concepts out to you because one of the things we're really going to talk about is the fact that everybody learns differently. So whether we are doing an investigator meeting or we're doing internal trainings with our CRAs or if we're doing a site initiation visit where training is critical that our site understand the specifics of the protocol, we have to keep in mind that people learn different ways. We're going to review the application of training and good facilitation skills in clinical research. We're going to discuss adult learning principles and styles, and we're going to identify successful training techniques applied to a clinical research setting. And I'm going to, again, just give us a very broad base. So we'll talk about training tips for when you do webinars and training tips when you do things live. We'll talk about things like how people should be seated and what to do if you have a quiet audience or a disruptive audience. This will be an audience-oriented sport. So again, you're going to learn as much or more from each other than you will learn from me as we go through today's session. There's a number of handouts that have been provided. You should have received 6 handouts, and I'd recommend you take a look at those. So we have some on principles of adult learning, just different tips for how to communicate, what adults like, and really keeping that in mind or in perspective when we do develop trainings or when we do work with different audiences. And there's also a worksheet in there that you can kind of go through it and really consider, again, especially for if it's onboarding or investigator meeting or SIV training, that's our site initiation visit training with new sites, how are we going to approach that? How do we provide these different opportunities? So it also has some strategies and techniques, variety of teaching methods, provide structured learning opportunities, how do we provide feedback, individual learning needs, and just tips again on how adults learn best. So just some considerations there. And then one of the other items that's been provided is a facilitation skills self-assessment. And this is something that I do quite often as I try to assess, am I delivering the information in a way that people can understand it? Do I understand it? And do I appeal to a broad audience, I should say, or a broad group of participants in terms of the different methodologies used? So it's just kind of a nice sort of check-in on your own skill sets, and it's great, again, whether you're just going to be even just running team meetings, because that is a form of teaching or training. The goal is, again, to communicate effectively and make sure that people understand what we're saying. So even if you're not going to be hosting investigator meetings or supporting onboarding training, you're just doing more one-on-one, again, it's sometimes helpful just to check in with yourself and make sure you're communicating effectively. And here's just a sort of a worksheet or a handout, almost newsletter style, on different tools to engage your audience. And then one of the challenges we face sometimes is we just want to lecture sort of death by PowerPoint, where we just go on and on and on about what's written on a slide, or we just read our slides, and they're just full of words. So here we have 50 tips for you, or 50 instructional methods, so you can kind of mix it up a little bit and consider how do you ensure that people are understanding the information, because if you read the slide, you have no way of knowing if your audience actually understands anything that you're saying or if it's relevant to them in any way, shape, or form. So by having different instructional methods, different ways of engaging people, of having conversations, even if they're somewhat activities or almost game-type style, you can assess people's understanding because you hear what they have to say. And sometimes the challenge is actually just getting people to speak up. Some of the other handouts we provided, this one is called the VARK questionnaire, and I'm going to go over what that really is. It's the visual, oral, read, write, kinesthetic methodology that we use. And this is a complete questionnaire. And what's kind of interesting about this, again, is that you may think that you yourself are a very reading type learner, where you really enjoy just to read things and you don't necessarily want someone else to tell you. You want to be able to see it for yourself. Or you may feel that you really learn best when things are hands-on. So it's just a series of questions that are validated to assess what type of learner you are. And I found that when people take this questionnaire, sometimes they're very surprised. They may be equally balanced in all 4 groups, where they really thought that they only learned one way, or vice versa. They may think they need a variety, where they're really leaning much more towards visual. So it's just an interesting assessment to do. And when I do live courses, I'll have people sort of stand up and move around the room based on the answer to the question. And it's interesting to see how many people end up moving based on whether they're kinesthetic or read right, or how many people end up sort of staying in the same place as we do the activity. So it's just, again, a way of engaging people, but also assessing how people learn best, and it's nice to do as a self-check. I also have provided a trainer's survival kit for you, just a quick checklist of different tools that you may need to consider for any time you're training a group. You'll notice that one of those tools on there is tea, good for throat care, and also aspirin, because I found that when I do teach extensive courses for 4 days in a row and I'm on my feet and I'm running around and facilitating, I end up feeling like I'm a bit crazy, maybe a little bit schizophrenic by the end of the week, because you're always thinking as an instructor or as leading a conference or as leading a call or leading a training or a meeting. You're always thinking about what is happening now, how much time do you have left, what do you still need to talk about, the fact that the person in the back of the room is falling asleep on you, someone else is glaring at you with their arms crossed and you're really looking at that body language, the room is getting a little bit warm, and you're also worried that maybe your slides aren't changing and you're having some technical difficulties, or you'll suddenly notice a typo on a slide that's up in front of you, and so your mind is working on many different levels. So aspirin's very useful.